Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining and welcome to another D. Hilton Associates webinar. Today, I'm excited. We're going to be talking about the 2022 compensation forecast.
Wait, you didn't show your jazz hands.
Oh, I got jazz hands. Jazz
Okay.
hands. Sorry. I'm excited, everybody. This is the 20th year that we're going to be doing this. And this is going to be a two-part series. This is going to be part one. Part two will be following very shortly, likely next week. So stay tuned for that. We got a lot to cover today, but first, let's talk about a couple of administrative items. This webinar will be recorded, and we'll be posting this on our website in about 3 to 5 days, where all the other webinars are posted as well. So a lot of great content, a lot of information there as well. If you have any questions through this whole process, please don't hesitate to use the Q&A section. We'll try to get to questions on the fly, but if we don't get to your question, we'll certainly follow up with you and answer those questions as we can. You'll also receive a follow-up email after this webinar that's going to contain a survey. Please take a moment to go ahead and fill out that survey. Let us know how we're doing, what you liked, what you didn't like, and things you would like to see in the future. A lot of this stuff that we put together as webinars is from our clients and from individuals from these webinars because we want to provide the best data for you. So without further ado, before I get into too much more administrative stuff, I'm going to introduce John Andrews. Thank you so much for joining me, John.
Good to be here.
Yeah, it's been a while, haven't it?
It's been a while, but we've built 2 new production studios, so we're trying them out today. They look wonderful. Thanks for all the guys for helping out and getting us to this point.
Tons of work getting us to this point.
So let's get started.
We've got all the kinks knocked out, I'm sure.
Yeah. Absolutely. Hey, Jeff.
Yes, John.
Question to start. When it was performance appraisal time and you got a 10-page appraisal, what page did you read first?
I got to flip to find out how much I made.
Absolutely. You flip right to the back, right?
Absolutely.
So today, instead of going through 50 slides to find out what we're looking for compensation budgets and forecasts, let's just do it up front.
I think that's a good
You
idea.
okay with that?
I feel good about
Okay,
that.
let's go to some slides and get this started. So for 20 years, as Jeff said, that we've been able to had the privilege of looking at the marketplace and putting our focus on what we see. And so, first slide today, you can leave after this.
As the count goes down.
Decided to lead with the lead, right? But historically, for the last 4 or 5 years, you've seen everybody budget 3%, and we just can't buy into that this year. Just simply doesn't make sense with the pieces of the puzzle that we're looking at. Look at that box to the right there. We're looking at 3.35 for a well-performing credit union, at least to look at that. If you're in the 3s or below 3s, I just don't think we're going to be competitive in the next year. Why? Few reasons. First is even during COVID, we had seats to fill and we weren't filling them. It was taking longer to fill them. Gig workers are got a taste of what it was like, so they're looking at, well, maybe this isn't a career, but I'll do a job for a while and then I'll go surf and do a job and surf and those types of things. And then as we've seen this, whether it was regulatory mandated or just credit unions taking their own lead and saying living wages are going to bump up these numbers. So look at all the sources you classically go to, whether it's World at Work or ERI or anything on the web, it's a pretty solid 3. And we say we got to move off of that number. So as you go into budgeting and planning, take a look at how you're going to stretch the dollars or squeeze a few more dollars to take care of some of these issues.
And we've talked about this before, how we feel like the 3% is kind of a self-fulfilling prophecy. We've seen it in the survey. So we did it last year. Hey, what are you going to do next year when they send that survey out again? Well, probably 3%.
Excuse me.
Yeah.
That's a CFO prophecy.
So I think we're kind of seeing the repetition of this based off of self-fulfilling prophecy.
Yeah.
And that's why we do also say, and this also comes from us doing a lot of salary administration reviews as well.
Absolutely.
We always see people plan for 3%, but by the end of it, they do need that little extra to bump them up to maintain competitive market stance.
The biggest variance I saw was 30%. They budgeted 3.
They just left off a 0 is what you're telling me.
It was tight, tight. So how we're going to get to these bigger numbers or get more dollars into our high performers' pockets, it's not how we communicate. It's not what we communicate, but it's how we communicate it. So this idea of if your 3% budget or 3 and 3.5, look at that. Look at the slide here. Less than a nickel. That's not a selling point. But what we can say, if we look at the slide here, is look, our top performers, we're trying to commit to around 6%. For our people that are just, doing the job and meeting expectations, that's a 2. We put that together, and I think we're going to reward people properly.
Yep.
But to do that, we have to have good goal setting, good performance management, and you really have to have your frontline managers at the top of their game to make sure that, the performers are recognized.
Yeah, and this is not a increase in the budget. You're still sticking with your 3 or 3.35% budget. It's a reallocation of how that gets distributed to your top performers and your solid performers and your people that are not quite performing up to standard.
Absolutely. So here's a chart that we've tracked for the 20 years, and it's we have to thank World at Work for tracking this and pestering people to fill this out. But what I wanted to look at, it has been now look at the scale. It's not huge. It's between last 4 or 5 years we're in the low 3s to 3, and so there's not a deviation. You go back to '08 and '09 when we had a financial crisis, you saw that big drop. In '07 we hit a 17-year high for inflation. So our budgets had to be higher because the cost of bread was higher.
Everything was more
And the
expensive.
2 things back in '07 that were really driving the inflation number was energy cost and food cost, and they went hand in hand. And so we were forced to move up. We hit the crash, boom. We had to get you saw how much it dropped. You know what I love about this chart, and I love charts.
You love charts.
But look at the green line is executives. So for once, and this is all industries, not just credit unions. Pay for performance said executives took the hardest, the brunt of the decrease here. They still got a lot of stock options, but still, on chart it looks pretty good. When we look at salary range adjustments, now sometimes, the lay person that's not in HR, there's a difference between a range movement and a salary budget. Salary budgets help you with what you're going to do for merit increases, how you're going to do new hires, are you going to meet when you do promotions. Ranges are how you're moving your scales and your structures, right?
Your targets.
Right. And you can see that for a number of years, it dropped after 7, 8, and 9 because, people were squeezing budgets and being tight, not being generous. And then it moved up because inflation moved up a little bit, and then they started to feel a little bit better. Then COVID hit, but we've seen that number in the 2s. And again, we're saying you got to be higher than that this year if you're going to compete with the labor shortage.
Yeah, I think that's a great point because that's one of the most common questions I get. Just saying, okay, so I got to budget 3% for this and 2% for this. No, they're completely separate, completely different. They work on the same function, but one is a sunk cost, the other is on the back end. There's no immediate cost moving your ranges.
But think of this. Your ranges are moving. Just take 20, 21, and 22. Move your ranges 2%. Put your merit increase at 3%. Inflation is at 2 or 3%. You're never getting to midpoint in the progression. You're never maxing out. And that's where people get frustrated because they don't see the career progression when it comes to the compensation as a reward for that. And we get the classic, what do I have to do? Quit and get rehired to get a raise. So we have to move off of these numbers to see if we can do a better job. Now, here's our forecast page. Something we've done for over 10 years now is we think it's real misleading in the industry to look at an overall credit union number. Now, it's technically right to produce that, but look this year. Right now, there's 320 credit unions below 7% capital. That's more than triple than 2020. And it's not because we have a lot of non-performers. A lot of that was just deposit growth. The denominator's larger and they're slipping into the 7s. Regulators hit those credit unions hard. They don't like to see raises. They like to see frozen budgets and those types of things. But when you add that many credit unions into an overall credit union industry number, you're actually hurting our high performers. So we break it into 3 categories. The second category is sufficiently capitalized, 7 to 10%. Now, that's a value judgment. You can use whatever word you want, but 7 to 10 is, we think, regulators not going to bother you. And look, 39% of the credit unions fall into that category. We're seeing the 3.35. But we also, and we've seen this since we started the company, executive budgets are about double what we see for staff. So if we're at 3, we're at 6 for executives. In this case, it's not exactly there because of inflation, but if you budget everybody at 3%, the execs, the technical specialties are moving much faster in the marketplace, and that will put you behind. And then our well-capitalized credit unions, a 24% decrease, not because of underperformance, just because of the equation. And we're seeing 3.35 to all the way up to 4.35 for that staff budget. And then you can see we're up in the 6 into the low 8s for executives. To get this done, we also have to mirror this with what we should do for salary range increases, and we see that at 3%.
And the other question I get often is, hey, why is the executive range moving that much, or why is there so much there, especially when in comparison to like the data from the World at Work? John kind of touched on that as well. They are dealing with companies that have stock options and these other kind of things where the salaries aren't that big of a thing.
Yeah.
And credit unions, we have to talk about the salary as well, of course, as the variable pay and the pay for performance piece. But it's a little bit more focused on we've got to touch those salaries, make sure those salaries are moving along very well.
And again, as a board member reads maybe just a Bloomberg article or a Wall Street Journal and says the the average exec raise was X, total comp with the equity positions and some of the other programs they have don't translate well. So, we work with, 80% of the billion-dollar credit unions right now. We're seeing the moves they're making. So this is a better way to hang your hat, in our opinion. Okay. So with that said, we have to start looking at a workforce as segments, as instead of being egalitarian, everybody gets the same thing. So when I used to do a lot of strategic planning sessions, the trick question I would ask is, are all members equal?
Of course they are.
They are, right?
Absolutely.
Whether you have $1 million here or $1, you're getting a vote. And somehow then we go, well, even the ones that lie, steal, and cheat from you, are they the same? Okay, well, not those guys. And then somehow that transferred to the employee space, that all employees should be treated in an egalitarian fashion, and everybody should get, if we're all getting 3%, we're all getting 3%, we're all getting a $250 gift certificate at the holidays, we're all getting the same thing. But in reality, if you don't treat your core work, you don't have a difference between your core workforce and your critical workforce, you're actually diluting your reward and recognition opportunities for the people that are really driving their business.
Absolutely. And we've been talking about this for quite some time, of being able to segment this out. And one of the other keys that I like to touch on is that the critical workforce does not necessarily mean the executives.
No.
A lot of times they say, oh, you're talking about the executive team. Well, yeah, they're critical, but let's talk about your workforce. Those are your executives.
Let's do a real world example. In 2021, if you didn't have your mortgage jobs in the critical workforce, you weren't making money.
Yep.
You had seats to fill. You needed to match the market. You needed to do special programs for them. Well, why do they get something special? Because they're driving the business right now.
Yep. And
so look at this quadrant. So our core workforce, they have a high impact on our value because they're doing the blocking and tackling. That's the teller, that's the member service rep, that's the loan officer. We need them. Okay. Now the flexible labor, we need them to fill seats to get stuff done, but it's more project delivery. In the old days when we would do like a document conversion, we used to have lots of files, and now we're putting them on however we digitize them. Let's hire some temps. Let's hire, some what we call gig folks now. Get that, and they're out of here. We need them to move some paper, but we don't necessarily need them for the business. And then the specialists, or like you said, in the IT arena, the risk arena, are very, very important in today's environment. But the critical is where I want to spend my time.
Yep. And I like your explanation, the difference between like a specialist and critical workforce. You have the specialist, which is like a data analyst. They take all the data, turn it into something usable, and then hand it to the critical workforce that drives the strategy, brings that stuff to bear, and actually provides disproportionate value to the organization, taking that data, turning it into information, and then turning it into actual results.
So in this example, maybe 10 to 15% would be defined critical. Another 10 might be specialist, and that bulk would be below the line there. So if we can look at differentiating our budgets, can we get them into the right quadrants? We'd be very, very successful in our retention strategies. Okay. So how do we do it?
I'm glad you asked, John.
You put the slide together.
No.
I agree. So look at the left side here. We talk about a lot of the stuff we do is still grounded in pre-World War II, and we were in a manufacturing society. We got into World War II. And so all of the systems are really like, if you were a specialist making this type of rivet and putting it into a car, you were worth X. And if you did this, you were worth X plus. And that's because we had a lot of people doing the same jobs. And then over the years, things have changed to more what we would call knowledge workers, and knowledge workers need to get paid different, but we still have these constraints of the old way we looked at salary structures. So when we get to critical workforces, what can we do? So I'm just going to read a couple because of time, but look at that. In that first one, if you have two pools, if you have 5% for your top 20%, a budgeted target of if you're good, you get 5% raise, and then use 2.5 for the other 80%, we're back to 3.
Mm-hmm.
So if the CFO says you have X amount of dollars, how do I get dollars into the hands of those really superstars in critical workforce? And that's the way to do it. And we also have to be, we can't be afraid of shutting down merit increases. If you do good pay for performance and reward and recognition, let's get the emphasis off on the base if we can. So look at that second bullet here. Why not a merit increase matrix that says no increases to employees? You're already above midpoint, but you're just meeting expectations. I'm paying you a premium every day to midpoint because midpoint equals the 50th percentile of the market. So why not say if you're in that? I'm being very, very fair of how I'm looking at you. And when you're there, you might have an opportunity for better variable payouts because the members, your job, you've got a book of business, so to speak. So let that do the talking.
Yep.
In this concept. And then one thing that you'll see throughout the program today is we're trying to get away from the annual concept, especially for our younger workforce, our newer workforce. They need more frequency. It can all add up to the same amount of dollars, just we're going to parcel it out a little different. So we'd love to hear from people if anybody's doing things like this and have best practices. We're going to share, y'all share with us, and let's see if we can find that magic bullet that works in today's environment.
Yeah, and this is another opportunity to really reevaluate your performance management process, because to make this successful, you have to have a tight grip on your performance management.
And I think that's why some people are afraid to tackle some of these strategies, is because they want the fear of we're going to discriminate or we're going to have special ways to look at people and it's at the expense of others. If you can document it and you have a good plan and performance management's working well, you got nothing. Don't
return
hide
on
from
investment.
Don't
Absolutely.
don't hide. Don't hide.
But if your managers are giving everybody a 5, it's time to have that conversation.
All right, you're not getting a 5, Jeff.
Oh, come on. Not everyone, just me.
Okay, so just to recap, what we're seeing out there is we're thinking some of the national literature is going to fall short in the next 12 to 18 months. If you're able to carve out some additional dollars, differentiate your critical workforce, I think you're going to be very pleased with the outcome.
Yep.
Don't be afraid to look at some of these scenarios. People are going into planning now. Why not do some tests and see what you can come up with?
It's the equivalent of investing in a very good marketing campaign. The return you get from investing in that is usually an exponential return.
Absolutely. So the other thing that we've historically done is try to look at the top 5 trends. Some people have 20 and 50 and 30 trends, but I think we're capable of showing you 5. And that's what we're going to show you today. So our first trend is you can't pay them if you can't get them to say yes. And what's very interesting is the concept of an offer is changing quickly. And the future of work, it's not the work, it's jobs. So I'm not jobs.
The other way around.
Yeah.
Well, is work, not
jobs.
jobs.
I'm going to tell you the story why I'm so frazzled. When my oldest daughter was in 3rd grade, it was take your parent to work, career day, whatever they call it now. And so doctors, lawyers, and then I said, what in the world do I actually do that I can explain to a 8, 9, and 10-year-old what I do? So I said, well, I'll talk about research. And so what I came up with was Wally Wallingford from Walla Walla, Washington, was coming to open his Wally Wonderful World of Waffles in the Woodlands. And so I needed to do some research to see, well, what food should I serve these kids in the Woodlands? So the teachers actually let me send out a survey to all the parents, 250 kids, and talk about their dinner habits. How many times a week do they go out and what type of food do they like? And I was excited. And I said, okay, so I'll have 10 kids lined up and I'll each put them in a waffle a costume. And then if it's 30%, I'll have 3 waffles stand up. And my wife said, no, we're not dressing kids up as waffles. But the point of the story is we did all this great research and finds out that parents in the Woodlands in the 5-day work week, they go out 4.2 times a week. They're eating in the minivan in the back. Chicken fingers was number 1, and it's Texas, and tacos was number 2. Just to let you know, I'm sure that research could be replicated and taken care of.
Yeah.
But the point of the story is, I get in front. So there's 250 little ones. The parents are there, doctors and lawyers. And my lead was, I love my job. And I had 250 kids go back at me. It's career. And I go, gosh, it was unbelievable. So the point of the story is, I'm going to hunt down every one of those kids right now and say, people aren't talking about careers, are you, anymore?
This is a longitudinal study to show you kids were wrong.
Yeah, so let's go back to the slide, and I'll show you what I mean by this is. Today, and I know everybody out there has seen this, signing bonuses are unbelievable. ZipRecruiter did this thing, 2% in March, and it was 20% by June.
Yeah.
And that has not, and literally, I break and take signs like this, the Burger King side, 1,500, 2,000. The retail environment, that's what we're seeing. There's been a big push on living wage versus minimum wage, and we'll talk about that in a second. Making more frequent than annual increases in that first couple of years. And then finally, it's got to be reward and recognition to keep people around. It just can't be talk about the money. So let's go into this a little bit further. The goal is human experience today. So forget about engagement and satisfaction and even work-life balance. The problem with work-life balance, you see it's at the bottom left quadrant of effectiveness, because the company dictates work-life balance, not the employee. So what the employee wants is this bottom-up concept of what it means to have the best life or good life or winning or whatever they call it today, and that the employee drives that.
Yeah, by I guess it's transitive properties there or something like that. Work is the first word in that, so they're dictating work is the most important in your life. We'll blend that into there.
That's why Kraft says it's cheese and macaroni, not macaroni
And
and cheese.
cheese.
Remember those commercials?
You got to know what's most important. It's on the front end there.
You got to sell the cheese hard, if we're going to sell some of these boxes.
And I like this because this is a natural evolution we've gone from employee engagement to employee experience, broadening it out, tying in all those pieces. But let's just go back a step even further forward. And it's the human experience. It's who's doing the work. It's what we're doing on a day-to-day basis. It's your life and everything.
And as we struggle to get back to work from home, gig working part of the year, all of that goes into the employee wants to control the destiny or have more ownership of that. And the more we're allowed to do that, and which is so hard in the retail environment, the more we're allowed to do that, we've got to have employees that will respond and resonate to that. So when we look at this, the definitions of some of the strategies we want to do between top performers, critical workforces, I went through some of the can you say 5 to 10% are top performers in your critical workforce? Yeah. What do we do for them? Here's a list of things that we like to see. And it's frequency. To make an employee, wait a year ain't good enough.
No.
And then in some pay systems, when you redline, which means you're maxed out in your pay structure because you're so great and you've moved up, to tell them, Jeff, you're an asset to the credit. You're an absolute unbelievable contributor to this organization. You're a thought leader. You're incredible. But I can't give you a raise this year because you're maxed out.
Because this policy here, yeah.
And then it's 1-800-LinkedIn, LinkedIn.com. He's off. He's out there.
I'm going to call the website for this one. That's what we're going with.
Yeah, I guess you can't do that anymore.
Yeah.
Their help. You need a help desk? No.
Close enough.
I want a job. So when we look at this, when we talk about differentiation, sometimes when one of the things I want to key in on is the critical workforce, you can actually set a different compa ratio goal for them. We typically, conservatively, historically said we want everybody at 1.0, compa ratio 1.0 equals midpoint. Every lousy job in your organization, if we're at 1.0, we're just running a great program. But what happens if we take those 5 to 10 top percenters and say we want them at the 75th percentile of the market, which means they might be way, way penetrated into that range above 50th. We typically, when we look at a credit union, we look at 0.9 to 1.1 as a range, but let's push the 1.1.
Yep.
But not for the whole structure, but for those key contributors, top performers.
The critical individual, again, it's kind of a reallocation and distribution of those funds that you have to better put that into the hands of people who are driving disproportionate value.
And for our HR buddies on the call today, you can't talk about this in a philosophical manner.
Mm.
We're going to have to sell this. It means getting out an Excel spreadsheet, running all of your census across it to show that, the 6% for this and 2% for them equals 3%. You're going to have to take care of all those doubting Thomases and run scenarios. And then that astute CEO is going to go, for X amount more, I can get this. Heck yeah, I'm in. But you're going to have to be real illustrative and in your narrative. It just can't be, wouldn't it be nice to pay people more? You can't do that. So in a goal-driven culture, the anchor is going to be a pro-social mission and values. So credit unions should have a great advantage in the marketplace because we do good work.
Mm-hmm.
But when you look at some of our websites are fantastic, promoting that. Some of our recruiting material is incredible at this, but we have to walk the walk and follow through. So we start there. We have our typical traditional pay systems, and then we have to break out the organization. We need to treat management and executives in a key specific way. And then we need to keep staff a specific way. And then our one-offs that we have always had a hard time integrating the system, wealth management, mortgages, collections, they need to have their own programs. So it's a drag for HR people because we're going to be monitoring more systems, but it's the absolute right thing to do to match the marketplace. Okay, so when I go back to executives and I look at what we need to do for them, they're driving the business. I want them here for a long time as long as their skill sets stay strong. But our staff, we need to really stop saying we're trying to keep every employee here for 30 years. They don't want to be here 30 years. You can't afford them for 30 years. You don't have enough jobs, career progression for them. Start with 2 to 4.
Mm-hmm.
You get a return on your training. You'll keep them there. And then you've got good continuity for your service delivery. But sometimes we get into this, we're such a great place. We're a family. We have jobs for life. And it's not going to work in this environment. So in this case, what we're looking at is what we'd love to see people and what we're seeing working this is what a first year looks like. Signing bonuses. And I'm not just talking about senior techie jobs. It's going down to the retail level. We need to onboard before they onboard.
I think that's a big key on this one. Huge key.
There's a stat on the next page, but it's okay if I talk about the next page.
It's okay. It's almost as if you have prior knowledge to what's coming up, John. I like this.
45% of new hires that have accepted a job are willing to consider another job if the new job doesn't contact them between the time they said yes and the time they show up.
Mm-hmm.
If you ghost them, so to speak, there's a 1 out of 2 chance they're not showing up.
Yep.
Because I'm not giving up. If I really want this person, I'm gonna,
yeah,
more frequent to get them to come my way instead of your way.
Yeah.
So don't think about the high five. And I know a lot of our HR guys know this. You don't high five when they sign. You high five when they show up.
Yeah, I was going to say, what's the most stressful day is that Monday. Are they going to show up? Are they not going to show up?
And then year one increases. What we're talking about is if you have a training period or an onboarding process, as they click off competency in those areas, do something there. Don't wait a year.
Yep.
And then also maybe in 3, 6, and 12 or 4, 8, and 12 month recognition makes sense. And then real-time evaluations, we see this 20 to 30-year-old generation really needing a lot of feedback. How did I do today? Am I doing okay? What did you think? And managers are busy. They've got a lot of other things on their plate, but the investment in those types of just real quick check-ins will pay immeasurably.
Absolutely. It's so hard for a lot of individuals. I mean, until you reach a certain point in your life and or career that you're able to plan for the year.
Yeah.
If you kind of started, okay, what am I going to do next year? Or your manager talks to them and says, hey, in a year, here's what I want you to do, versus saying in the next 30 days, or then even the next week, next 2 weeks, here's what I'd like to accomplish, or here's what I would like to see 30, 60, 90 days out. That's doable. I can achieve a goal. I can keep that in focus, especially with all the day-to-day stuff that gets thrown at us.
I love that point. I used to do that with platform training. What I would do is just to show, the concept of time for our under 30-year-olds, I'd say, put your head on your desk. Well, this isn't a training. Put your head on your desk and raise your hand when you think it's been a minute. No, Jeff, that was 12 seconds.
Come on, I can't
So-
put my head down that long.
No, that's 30
I
seconds.
need stimulation, John.
No, that guy just fell asleep. It was either they were too soon or they fell asleep. One of the two. But the point of the story is their definition of frequent is not your definition, and we have to be in tune.
Yep.
Okay. So if we look at the last piece on that slide, it talks about custom programs. We have to be willing to differentiate. We have to be willing to modify some of our structures. And as CEOs struggle with how do I bring people back to work? Do I let some people? Do I make special cases for work from home or different locations? We're going to have to deal with that.
Mm-hmm.
Definitely deal with that. So these are some of the things that we talked about as you look at recruiting and what people are looking at. Here's some stats we think are good to throw at your boards just to give them a context of what we're dealing with. But look at that personalized gift. If you give an offer and a gift, that would influence if they like your job. So
I didn't get a gift, John.
that is so not true.
That's true.
Part of Jeff's deal working D Hilton, I get him 10 pounds of cinnamon red Jelly Bellies every 6 weeks.
By far the best retention policy I have ever seen on any organization.
I literally go by your office to see if you're low. So don't give me that. No, don't give me that.
We really do. We need to take a picture of this bag it brings in. It is phenomenal.
Our second trend here is cost of labor trumps cost of living. So we want to go through these concepts. And again, it's what you see in the national media, what looks intuitive is doesn't help us, quite frankly. So a lot of cost of living models overweight the housing piece. So we took San Francisco and Omaha, not to pick on them, just to say that's two, Midwest versus the West Coast. Look at this. If we look at 9,500 square feet of a two-bedroom apartment, it's $3,900 in San Francisco. It's $1,000 in Omaha. If you look at a house, $2.4 million versus $300. Now let's talk about $15 an hour as a living wage.
I'll take the $2.4 million house, please, John.
Now look, I got these stats for you. So $15 an hour is $31,200 after taxes, and in San Francisco that gets you $2,046 a month without any health care, savings, food, transportation.
You don't need any of that.
You can't, if you gave them your whole paycheck, you can't get an apartment. So what do? You're living with, some buddies, you're living at home. So cost of living in San Francisco for our retail employees isn't the question.
Yeah.
And I think actually, excuse me, go ahead.
No, I was going to say, I think that this is a great definition of the differentiation between a living wage and the minimum wage, because a lot of times they'll say, okay, we're going to make the $15 and that's our livable wage or living wage.
That's a politician number because it's
exactly
more than the minimum. So living wage in San Francisco is $28 an hour if you're single with no other obligations. If you're family of two and two kids, two parents, two kids, all right, it goes up to $63 an hour in San Francisco. Let's talk about $15 an hour. So that's the disconnect. And that's, our job is not to solve all that as an employer, but to at least have some empathy of when we're talking about, 3.0 raise versus a 3.35 raise, and that's 4.4 cents. And then we're going to try to find an apartment in San Francisco.
And to get a better insight on some of the livable wage or living wage stuff, the MIT Living Wage Calculator is a great resource there that kind of breaks down those pieces. And you can see a little bit further about what we're talking about.
And just to finish up the thought here, in Omaha, an apartment would be $1,000. You're making $2,083 because your taxes are slightly better, so you're more take home by $40. So you're going to pay half of your paycheck to pay for housing.
Mm-hmm.
It's just tough, and boards need to understand that as they make decisions.
But you're a critical workforce, and we want you to be here for 30 years at $15.
Yeah. So the next thing is it impacts market rates. Labor does, not living. So in San Francisco, we just kind of went through the story about how expensive it is. If 100 is the national average, it's almost double to live in San Francisco. But look at the difference between what they pay tellers versus what they pay in Omaha. That's only like a 26% difference. Okay, and then you get into these other jobs where the IT programmers, there's just not a lot of programmers in Omaha. So they're going to get a kind of a national or regional wage.
Mm-hmm.
And you see that with some of your pricing about when people move into different markets, right?
Absolutely. I mean, there's a big difference between the cost of living. And that's what a lot of people have been talking about. Hey, should we adjust the salary structures if somebody's going remote and be able to say, hey, we should just adjust it to the cost of living? There's not a direct correlation between the cost of labor and the cost of living in a particular area. The other thing is that you can have a change in your cost of labor and the cost of living is not going to adjust. We talked about this recently with another client of ours that in a very low cost of living area, Amazon was coming to town. That's going to bring in.
No one wants to hear that.
Nobody wants to hear that. It's
That is
500 jobs
used to
instantaneously.
be, 60 Minutes is calling, or IRS is calling.
Oh no, Amazon is coming.
You don't want to see them coming.
So that changes the cost of labor in that area, but the cost of living is not going to be adjusted or impacted. So you have to be able to plan for those type of adjustments by looking at the markets that you're in or looking at the markets that your individuals are going to be in as well.
Well, and again, there's a lot of press that Amazon gets about not being, some units want to unionize, some units are mistreated, and during the holidays everybody's overworked, and we're not talking about any of that. That's the perception. If they need somebody to fill a seat,
They're going to get it.
They'll pay $2 more an hour
Yeah.
to get through whatever.
And
so it's just deep pockets that are tough.
It's also so funny how they're going to twist some negative things on these. I read an article recently that said, oh, hey, how do you tell if an organization has a toxic workforce or work environment? Oh, they're offering sign-on bonuses. So they were actually making a negative out of sign-on bonuses saying, they're so desperate for you to work there, they're going to give you more money. That's a clear sign that they have a toxic work environment. It's interesting how we twist that and make that an issue as far as that goes.
Absolutely. So as we move into this new era of coming back to work and gig working and work from home, it's making us rethink about our strategies of how we do market pricing, and we're suggesting this to our clients. It used to be commuting patterns. So we'd take our retail and frontline employees and say, how far would they drive to come work for you? Those are our competitors. And it was fast food. Okay, and those types of things. And then we would go regional for tech and IT type stuff. And then at the top, it would be a national market. But because now a lot of companies are willing to let people work from home or come into the office once a week or twice a week, we need to expand how we define the market. So we're seeing this transition because we had this really good formula that worked since the 90s. In the 90s, we had point factors and job hierarchies because no one left, and we had retention. We didn't have retention issues. Then as we had supply problems, we went to a market pricing technique, and now that's evolving into we nearly need to look at a broader definition of where people can work. And the thing that we always talk about when we do market pricing, 2 steps. You go to the market from the employee's perspective. Where can they take their skill set? And it's not just a bank or credit union or financial institution. If you can do cash handling and customer service, not member service, make it generic, you can go anywhere. And that's your competitor. And then we said the next circle was that regional look for techies and specialists, and then a national market. So we're reworking that to say maybe we need to expand those circles of where people want to work, because now other companies are making those opportunities available, and we're going to have to match it. So one of the things that also went into the mix of why we think we need to continue to look at higher than national averages when it comes to our budgets is the cost of labor. Look at the numbers in 19. Inflation, the world was patting itself, the United States was patting itself on the back for low unemployment. We had great diversity and everybody was working. And then COVID hit and everybody said everybody was out of a job.
Yep.
There's no question people were out of a job. Look at accommodation in BLS is hotels, hospitality, restaurants and hotels, that type of stuff. It went from 4 to 38%. That's catastrophic. And even last month, is it last month or 2 months ago? 2 months ago.
We're moving too fast, John. 2021 hasn't even happened yet, as far as I'm concerned.
Oh, that's a joke. Look, I wrote 1970 on a check.
Yeah.
Even you understand what a check is? I did 2 weeks ago. I wrote 1970.
Oh, geez, yes.
Right. But look, it goes down to 14. We're not there yet. We're not back to 19 numbers. But look at financial services, finance, and we were essential services during COVID. We had seats to fill and we couldn't fill them, and now we're going to be under 3%.
Yep.
this makes it all the more critical that we've got to start standing out and differentiating
And
the
I think that's
value proposition.
that's a perfect point, because all the numbers that you hear, and all the time I hear board members saying, "Oh, hey, we got to worry about this unemployment rate." Well, financial services, we haven't had that issue.
Well, as we look at this new normal, or whatever this post-COVID normal is going to be, employees are ready to get back to presence, employees aren't. And some of the things we're just asking, executives, you're not comfortable having your workforce at home is because your whole career was about observation and energy, about getting people together and just looking at how things were going, monitoring by sight. And now it's monitoring by Zoom and monitoring by reports, and that's tough for a lot of people that have come up through traditional management training.
And this is kind of a reinvention or a reallocation of an existing skill set. We asked our workers to do something completely different. It changed how
And
they did the
shined.
work
It
and shined.
shined.
So why can't we ask the same of our managers to say,
Yeah.
okay, you're going to have to manage a little bit differently.
Yeah.
The remote work is a challenge for a lot of managers because, like you talk about with the real charismatic individuals, how do they really illustrate that through a digital front? When you're talking to essentially a glorified Alexa, you're yelling into a box and the result kind of pops out.
And I don't care if you're in San Francisco or you're in Omaha. It's the cost of labor. And that Omaha job, there was a few people that could do that specialty, and all of a sudden they can work from
Anywhere.
Vail, Colorado. They can work from Idaho. They can be in Key West. Somebody's going to take them up on that.
Absolutely.
And one more person in the labor pool is out of your reach because you weren't willing to accommodate. So we're not saying you got to do this, because we're retail. Members want to see people and talk to people about their money. We understand that. But we've got to be more flexible.
Yeah, we have our own challenges, but we're good at actually confronting challenges, finding.
Yeah.
And the big thing with credit unions is that we've always been agile. We've been able to make these moves and adjustments. This is just the next step in that move and adjustment.
Now, look at that last box on the top 5 reasons why we ask employees. Look at that list. It's got nothing to do. I love my job. I love my work. I like the social part of it. I like going out to lunch with my buddies. I like having a coach and getting feedback. I like just having meeting sounds funny, but the sense of the part of the culture that is a meeting, a team having a meeting, as opposed to here's the agenda of that meeting. That's a difference. And then just to celebrate things, celebrating your birthday by yourself with your cat, it's not the same as having 5 coworkers take you out to, for enchiladas. So again, that's what we're seeing, and we've got to kind of bridge the gap of what it means. So one of the things we had a question is about the culture, and there's no question, and we're going to get that. We actually talking about mental health and how the culture is can actually improve the overall health of individuals by being part of something and wanting to belong to something.
Yeah.
So we'll talk about that in just a second.
And one of the biggest things that I thought about when it comes to culture is that first you have to truly understand what your culture actually is. A lot of times I talk to organizations and they'll give me the bullet points that's on their website and say, here's our culture, here's what we do, here's what we think. And let's talk about, how much of that is actually going to change by an individual being remote. Yes, there's going to be changes. Yes, there's going to be things, but are those the critical ones that make you and your organization different?
Yeah.
And if it is, then we got to defend it and we got to find a way to protect that.
Yeah.
If it's not, you might be just holding on to this is the way it was, and it might just be better on the other side.
It's a great point. When we do strategic plan, we talk about culture is like a DNA that cannot be replicated.
Yep.
So in the NFL, Bill Belichick and the Patriots had this great long run, and then all the other owners said, well, I want that too. And so they would hire a Bill. They couldn't, he was locked down. He's retention plans. He's never moving until he loses. But they would go get the assistant coaches, and they think they'd automatically have the Patriots culture, and they don't. Because it's a DNA that you protect. If you are happy with your culture and you're moving towards something that's positive, at all costs protect it. And I guarantee you, there's different people at different levels that are creating that culture, not just from the top.
Absolutely. Culture is definitely pushed from the top down, but my best example is who are your managers hiring? Is it the person that never takes a vacation, that stays to 3-4 hours after their shift? Is that the person they promote? There's your culture. You've just created a culture of no vacations, no sick days, no anything. We expect you to live and die here. And people don't realize that. They don't see that because they look at the numbers and they promote those individuals. And that perpetuates a culture. And then when people say, I say, hey, what is the culture there? That never comes up.
This is why I love Jeff. This in his future, a former life, future life, former life.
I hope I have a future life too.
when he worked for a big bad bank, you went around the country just teaching these concepts to small business owners and large corporations, and it just makes so much sense. It's just hard doing it.
It is really hard.
It's just the execution piece.
It sounds so easy. I love being a consultant. I can tell you, hey, these are great ideas and you should do them. And then I go home.
And then I go home. One of the things we wanted to get into the trends this year is we see a lot of large credit unions getting away from individual sales and reward plans and getting back to a team approach. And we have the omnichannel to thank for that. And so what happens in today's environment, a member starts a request between one area and they end at another, and then who gets credit for it? And in the old days, we would over credit. We give so much credit that we wouldn't make any margin on the product. Like, you get some, and Oprah, you get some, you get some, you get some.
Everybody's getting rewards.
Everybody gets a reward, and then all of a sudden, well, we need to have something for
where's my purse
for the bottom line and the membership. So we actually see gain share plans coming back, and we see team awards or modifying team awards, and we say don't give up on those ideas. From an administrative point of view, the hardest thing for any CEO to do is how to set a goal. Number one weakness of a board member is how to set a goal. Number one weakness of a branch manager, how to set a goal. But sometimes when we get to the team, it gets a little bit easier to look at how we were successful or define success. So in this chart, we're just simply talking about this idea of treat executives as a team, reward our critical superstars, carve them out, specialize. Don't be afraid to have special plans for folks. And then for staff, maybe instead of getting away from let's sell 13 pencils today, let's as a group sell pencils, because maybe referring them to the online app or referring them to another department is the best thing for them and for us to be efficient. So just think about that idea. So our fourth trend is it's time to look at benefits again. And we talk about mental health. And last year we saw a huge increase in people being exhausted, just sadness, and nobody really to relate with and to share that experience. And it was impacting work, and people not willing to get back into the workforce. Some of this is why.
And some side homework you guys can do is watch a great presentation by Adam Grant. He talks about languishing and how that has impacted the work and what it means. Very good. He does a TEDx on it. Highly recommend that one.
Yeah. So, to be, quip about it, you go, when was the last time last year employees said, I want to try something new and creative and a new way to do my job. They were just doing their job, and just because of this, it's just so intense. You couldn't get away from email. You couldn't get away from the phone. You couldn't, the work expanded whether you liked it or not. So what's interesting is, you got to talk. Mental health is a discussion, and it can't be isolated. If it's social isolation, where, we talk about our whole country has some challenges. But look at the number one people go to. You go to a coworker or a peer. So the question about what our culture is, if your culture can say, we're here for each other, not a family, but we're here for each other, we're able to talk and you feel freely talking about that, that's so positive for retention and, a stronger workforce and then ultimately end up with a stronger delivery to the membership. But coworkers are number one. And it's just not the same when you're on a Zoom call. Anybody have anything to share? No, I'm good. I'm
not pressing the unmute button today.
Yeah, hey, Jeff, you want to move your beer out of the frame?
Right. That's whiskey.
So, it also, what's interesting is we are coming back to the basics. What got pressed for the last 5 to 10 years? Oh, doggy massages. We'll go pick up your dry cleaning.
Goat yoga.
Yeah, goat yoga. Great waste of an hour on the internet, right? But what this 20 to 30 year old workforce is looking for is just really core things. Healthcare taken care of. Are they getting time off? If they need to, parental leave, or parent meaning up and down, and then support for mental health. That's what people want. So as we look at cost increases and have to deal with that, and that's what we're talking about our next program, what we see there is make sure that your basics are solid, because that's going to be something that is going to be a determining factor whether people come and work for you and then stay with you. So if we look at hybrid workforces, our challenge here, classics. No, I don't think there's anything on that list everybody would be shocked about. But the thing I want to really focus on is that last column. We cannot let employees pick their work from home days if you go to that model. My sister-in-law and her company, she's a psychiatrist, but she works for an accreditation organization now. So they had a committee. That's your first hint.
Uh-huh.
And they said, okay, what's the best configuration of work from home in the office? And they're in Chicago, and they have people all over the country because they go all over the world to do accreditation of doctors, accredited different hospitals and things. And so the committee came back with, we're going to have 5 options. Okay, you take it from here.
Good situation going on.
You can work 1 day from home, 2 days from home, 3 days from home, 4 days. So the committee came back to the boss and said, we're recommending 5 options. And I go, how in the world do you structure a business? You're never going to have anybody in the same place at the same time.
Yep.
With that, you need as an exec team, or as a management team, you drive the bus.
Yeah. And this allows for what we were talking about before, having those team meetings, having those schedules, having those things that come together while still remaining flexible.
Yeah. So go back to the slide real quick. Couple of things I want to talk about here are we're the retail environment, and our employees, we've hired employees that are really good with the public, so to speak. So, you're supposed to have that interaction. Is supposed to be part of what is a reward for your business. So we want to keep that. And then strategies that we can look at. A lot of it has to do with making sure people unplug, and, we're not going to have meetings on this day. And just, build that into your culture. You're going to have to experiment.
Yep.
But you can't take that position of no, 100% no, because that's when you're going to be picked off. Other companies are going to pick you off onesie, twosies, and you're going to wonder what happened. So we got to look at it, but you got to own it.
And to cherry pick another great point from Adam Graham, I'll probably refer to this a couple times because I love what he did on this one.
Write him a check.
I do. Exactly. He's taking care of my job for me. But he brings up this great point of, these days we have so much on our table, especially when working remote. We have a constant barrage of things. He says, I have so much to do that I don't have a to-do list anymore. I have a to-don't list. Yeah. And I think an organization gives them an opportunity to say, here's some things, put this on your to-don't list. Today, we're not going to be doing a Zoom call or something along that line. Let them disconnect. Let them pull some pieces back and understand what they're doing on a day-to-day life, so they're not languishing in that whole situation.
Well, I'll piggyback with that comment with just how we put a culture together. What we are, what we are not. In our culture, we value this, this, and this. In this culture, we don't value.
Yep.
And I used to have employees that would, work like the Wall Street hours. They were here 10, 11 hours, and then they would be here on the weekends. And I said, if that's not impressing me, what's the output?
Yep.
Because there's a certain point in anybody where it becomes, you can't put 3 words together and it makes sense.
There's only so many 2 a.m. mornings we can deal with here.
Absolutely.
I love one of the things, a story that I heard of that one is that you go to this CEO and he was talking about his organization, talking about his business. And the one thing you noticed, there was no awards or cases around for the recognition that they have. And he said, well, that's not really us. We win awards. We've got plenty of them. I got them all in the closet, but that's not us. Yeah. What's most important is our employees, what they do. And he had pictures of his employees on the wall, things along that line. He really set the stage of what's the most important thing in this organization.
I think that's great. So, and again, we're all going to struggle with this. We're going to do a ton of research next year on this, and we'll be bringing that to you as we start to see any trends that happen, good, bad, or ugly. Because it's not going to be pretty, but we've got to figure it out. And then our final one is succession planning just got harder. And one of the things that we're seeing is because there's such a small supply of what we need, a lot of people are going back to the promote within model.
Mhm.
Okay. And in the old days, well, we pay for education, we pay for training, then they'll just leave us. Guess what? They're still going to leave you.
Yeah.
You
They're
know,
already planning it on the front end.
but we have to be willing to play that game because it's for the membership.
Yep.
You know, we want people that are totally competent, and we want to have some internal options because the external market is not
Yep.
as great as it once was.
And that's that Richard Branson quote, train your employees well enough that they could leave at any moment, treat them good enough that they don't.
Treat them like they don't.
Mhm.
And that goes back to culture. So we've had a few questions today about how culture is going to look if people aren't in the office and we can't control it. That's what we're looking at, is what we are. This is our culture. What we are not, we just got to deliver it in a different manner to keep what makes us special, or keep that DNA going.
And keeping it consistent. Consistency is the key. If you say one thing, if you have it written on your wall, but you have your managers doing something completely different, guess which one is the most important one?
So when we look at that mobility, ramping up our universities, meaning our internal education and having access to those things, are really going to resonate well. When you look at that 20 to 30-year-old, if it's not a career, and it's not Ms. Barbara Bush Elementary, 250 kids, if I could find
It's a career.
it is taking the skill sets and making them transportable, and then making sure we teach people and they can help us out, and because it just shortens the time that we're not available to serve the members. Okay. So we look at, if you don't have people in the chairs, if you don't have those skill sets, it's kind of the definition of obvious, right? You're not going to hit your growth. Your member experience isn't going to be there. You're going to spend more money on folks and maybe not get any better result. And then you're not innovating.
Yep.
And if we know anything in this business, credit union industry has been great at innovation. We're first to market with a lot of stuff, and it's because people just had a driving force to do it, because that was our cultures. And we look at 63% of millennials think that, companies aren't developing their leadership skills,
And they're expected to be the next leaders.
and they're the leaders.
Mm-hmm.
So we have a lot of big credit unions, but even our biggest credit unions are still pretty small businesses. So in the old days, we'd create artificial layers, give you special titles, but you didn't do anymore. We really need to look at leadership competencies, because even if you're a team leader, if I've taught you leadership competencies and you have those instincts and you do it well, you don't need the title. You're going to run and run things better, and it's going to be efficient, and it's better for the member, but that needs to be recognized.
Mm-hmm. And then the pay for performance piece comes into play, and
Absolutely.
there's your variable pay.
Absolutely. And pay for performance today might mean team awards
Mm-hmm.
instead of like
individual.
Yeah. Yeah. And that was kind of the biggest thing we saw around the country when people really wanted to do pay for performance. Sometimes it became resource competition. I'm going to get mine at the expense of yours. And, I'm not going to share my leads with you, or I'm going to take care of this member because I know for sure I'm going to get paid for whatever I do. But we go back to the team approach. Maybe that helps reinforce the culture.
Yep.
Okay. So with that said, the reskilling challenge, why we're saying education has to be part of this strategic planning mix and planning for the future, is total number of skills required for a job increases 10% year over year. So what you know today, next year you only know 90% of the job, and next year you know 80% of the job. And think about, as we did work from home, and pretty much everybody had to be a help desk.
Yep.
So my dad has his flip phone, and y'all change your software upgrade, and it's your fault. Dad, you get a new phone.
There you go.
But now your guy has to triage what the person's saying that doesn't know the terms, and they don't know what's happening. But 10% year over year, 33% skills present in 2017 won't be needed in 2021. So, people, what they went to school with is not what they're going to end up with. And then 71% of school of the workforce had to use new skills last year because of COVID.
I'm surprised that's only 71%, to be honest with you. I
mean,
felt like it was 99.9%. We just all had to use new skills.
Well, when some people fill out surveys, I know it. I'm not admitting
They're very reliable.
So yeah, I think that number is on the low side as well. It's a very good point. So the other thing is, because of that that smaller labor pool out there and boards taking care of succession planning, really we're asking you to look at tier 2 and tier 3 executives now, because that might be your next executive. We had this thing in '08 and '09 where people lost retirement and they stayed longer as executives. And then they ran into the people that were normal retirement age. And we've seen just a lot of people leaving executive jobs. So if you can protect your turf by recruiting internally, retaining them, whether through retirement or retention agreements, you're going to have a very strong outcome, or protect yourself or insulate yourself from anything that might be happening out there. So in the old days, it was in the weeds if you even ask about this. But I think you have an absolute obligation to put that into, whether it's your exec comp committee or your executive committee, is to start identifying level 2 and level 3, or tier 2 and tier 3 executives that we can look at for this upskilling and the promoting from within.
And that brings us to the end. Everyone, thank you so much. We're right up against time. We do sincerely appreciate it. Again, this webinar has been recorded. So if you missed anything or would like to share anything, it'll be posted on our website in about 3 to 5 business days, somewhere right along that line. And also, you'll receive a follow-up email fairly shortly that has a survey in there. Let us know how we did, what you liked, what you didn't like. And if you had a question,
I didn't like your tie.
You didn't like my tie?
You're going to wear a tie next time.
It's fluorescent clear.
I need a tie.
No ties for me. I compromise on the jacket. I'm looking sharp today. That's my story. Thank you so much again. We really do sincerely appreciate you sharing your time with us. And we do want to see you on the next one. We'll have some information going on out when part 2 will be coming out. We'll be talking more about the benefits and other pieces of the compensation forecast, as well as when the compensation forecast will be officially released and out into the wild. But until then, thank you so much again. Please stay safe. And any other points?
No, you said it all. It's good working with you again. It's fine. Glad to be back in here and visiting with everybody. And again, this is our 20th year. So our actual study, our forecast that will come out 5 or 6 days, and go to our website. You can download it, but it's something that we've done for 20 years. We're real proud of it, and we think it's a great resource for planning. And if there's any questions or head scratchers, call us. We're here for you.
Yep. Don't hesitate to reach out. Been a pleasure. Thank you so much, and we'll catch you next time.
All the best, guys. Stay safe.